So, I mean, you mentioned building schools and stuff in Afghanistan. Yeah, that is amazing. I have a lot of respect for that. Right now, I wonder why it is. Would we focus on things like that?
Well, I mean, this COVID bill. I tried to jump to this a little bit too early in the intro of your show, but I have a lot of issues with this COVID bill on a number of different levels, one of which is a process issue, right? Like the idea that a 5,300-page bill is given to Congress with, 3 or 4 hours to read before they actually vote on the bill. I got a huge problem with that, right?
It's. I would say we should all have more than a problem with it. That they are telling us, screaming in our faces on every TV channel and every newspaper, the system is broken. We know it's broken, and we don't care. Because even AOC and Josh Hawley, I criticized them earlier, and I'll defend them in a second. But listen, they both tweeted about how this was awful. They're doing this 5,543 or whatever pages with only a couple hours to read it, and they voted for it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to speak out against it, come on, vote no, like Rand Paul did, like Ted Cruz did, like, I think it was like 65 or more Republicans. Only 2 Democrats voted no, and it was Tulsi Gabbard and Rashida Tlaib. Now, in their defense, at least they spoke up against it. Hundreds of other members of Congress voted for a ridiculous omnibus 2.3 trillion garbage bill that includes things like this. This is from the Foundation for Economic Education. $10 million for gender programs in Pakistan. Wonderful. That's exactly what the American people have been begging for. They've been coming together and rising up. These conservative protesters in Oregon, I know what they were really saying. Kate Brown, we want gender diversity programs in Pakistan. $10 million. I know it's not going to change the face of the country.
This is my next look. So here's the deal, right? The American people for the better part of a year have gone bankrupt, have seen their small businesses close. In Western Pennsylvania, in my district, I've seen food lines every single week. Thousands of people are struggling to put food on the table for their families. The American people are hurting, and optically, this is what you do at a time when the American people are hurting, when they're desperate for relief. Not only do you give them $600, and by the way, like to anybody that's watching right now, if you take the $900 billion plus COVID relief, right? And you just do the quick math, 330 million people, that's $2,700 for every man, woman, and child in America, right? They could have given us $2,700. Now, instead of doing that, the government took $2,700 from every man, woman, and child in America and gave you $600 back.
It would be
and said Merry Christmas. That's unacceptable in every way.
It would be like if I robbed you at gunpoint, took your wallet, took all your cash out, and then said, here's $20, and you went, awesome, thank you so much.
Right. And so to your point of building schools for Afghan children is amazing. Teaching little girls to read in Afghanistan is great because we want to make sure that we shape that next generation, but do it in a different bill. Timing and optics are important. Like you're looking at $700 million for Sudan, $1.4 billion to the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, which again, the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, I don't have a problem with. Really, what it basically is it funds counterinsurgency in Asia, basically keeps an eye on China. I got no issues with that, but don't put it in a COVID relief bill. The problem with these omnibus spending bills, right, is that Congress doesn't read them. They don't have enough time to read them. And because our representatives, the people that we send to Washington to do our work for us and look out for us, the people don't know what's in them either. And
nobody does.
And here's omnibus spending bills only get bigger. They don't get smaller, which is why our debt in the last 10 years has gone from $11 trillion to $27 trillion.
Now the debt to GDP ratio is a scarier thing.
128%, right?
Yeah, so we're generating massive debt and we're producing nothing, and that is how you kill economies.
That's how you kill economies. This is a national security issue, and this will become probably the greatest leadership challenge of our time. And I am gravely concerned with the amount of debt that we're racking up in this country, and bills like this don't help.
Trying to explain it to people is it's such a genius move on the part of the criminal mask-wearing bandits who just ripped us off, to quote the Babylon Bee.
Yeah.
Because what they've done is they've found a way to extract the value of labor from the working class in a way they don't notice. So I have there's like this one guy I know I was arguing with, and he's like, why are they only giving us $600? And I was like, no, they're not giving you $600, bro. They're taking $2,700 and giving you $600
back, yeah.
And and they don't understand. Like, what do you mean? They're writing me a check. I'm getting money. Listen, they've printed 35% of all U.S. dollars in circulation have printed in the last 10 months. So that's all happening right now. And that dilutes your buying power. It basically is a blanket wage reduction. But it's smart. A working class person get $10 an hour, a person barely, depending on how many hours they work, could be in poverty levels. They get $10 an hour, and they're saying, I want 15. I want $15 an hour. And then they do something like this. That $10 an hour can now buy you $7 worth of groceries from the year before, and they don't realize. They think, well, I'm still getting the same rate. I'll tell you this, man. I was shopping on Amazon, and I was buying a tablet. And so I clicked it, and it went into my shopping cart. And then something happened. I forgot about it. A day or so later, I opened up Amazon again, and it said price changes in your cart. The tablet went from $500 to $650. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. People don't get it. For a working class person, for somebody who's making $10-$50 an hour, that could be another week they have to work. Another week to get the tablet so they could do the job. And if you can't get access to tools like that, I mean, I'll tell you, if you get a good phone, a good smartphone, you can make good YouTube videos. You can start a career. You can start a podcast. If you can get if you can get some basic, cheap equipment. I started doing everything I was doing with just a cell phone. Not very good one either. Just like a basic smartphone. I saved up and I bought it. Imagine if before I was able to buy it, this crisis happened, and then I go into the store and I'm like, I finally saved up the $300 for the phone. And they go, it's $450 now. I would have been like, I guess no phone for me. Then I wouldn't have started live streaming. Then I wouldn't have started building up this company, and then it wouldn't even happen for me. You know what I mean? So there is a certain degree of having to earn and save to invest in yourself and invest in a business. They're extracting the buying power from the working class. Rich people are going to be fine. Rich people can buy stocks. I mean, I'm telling you, man, if you bought Amazon stock, if you bought Bitcoin, you're sitting back and you're laughing at all this.
Well, I mean, what concerns me is that $600 is, I feel like, insulting, and what's more is that Nancy Pelosi was given a better deal 6 months ago, but sat on it. The Democrats in Congress sat on it, did nothing with it because she wanted to score cheap political points against the president. Didn't want to give him an economic win before November 3rd. So what the Democrats, and look.
But come on, Sean. Could you imagine if Donald Trump would have won? I mean, the nightmare of this Cheeto fascist winning. The American people gladly forewent or this $1,200 stimulus package in October because they knew it was for the greater good, right? Defeating Donald Trump.
No. I mean, I'm telling you, I see this pain in Pennsylvania every single day. I mean, these people, I reach out to them. They call me on my cell phone. I'm like I said, I've tried to lead on this issue and be there for them through this time of crisis. And again, not just for Republicans, but for Democrats too. But to be clear, the Democrats in the House of Representatives sat on COVID relief because they didn't want to give President Trump an economic victory before November 3rd. The reason why that's important, Tim, is they made the political calculation that, yes, the American people are going to have to suffer. Even people that are Democrats that will likely vote for us, they're going to have to suffer for the next 6 months so that we can beat Donald Trump. I find that.
And I was joking, of course.
I know.
Some people might not realize. But think about that. The Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, held the American people hostage. And here's what I love. I love hearing this from these just like urban leftist types. I call you know what? I want to try and differentiate between the actual economic left who do pay attention to politics, and maybe we have disagreements on policy, but there's political commentators. They know a decent amount of their stuff. Maybe we think they don't know as much or whatever. But you have these like low information resistance type Democrats that they're not particularly politically active. And they're complaining. They're saying, but Nancy Pelosi passed her bill earlier this year and McConnell wouldn't approve of it. And it's like, what was in that bill? Well, that bill was the same problem we're seeing with this garbage omnibus. They put a bunch of trash in it,
Do you know
knowing the Republicans could not allow it to pass.
Well, of course. Do you know what the major sticking point in what Nancy Pelosi's bill was? Is she wanted bailouts for poorly run radical liberal cities. So,
but she wanted to get rid of She wanted to get rid of voter ID laws.
Well,
in
yeah,
states.
that was all crammed in there too. But,
nonsensical things to put in a relief bill.
What I told people in Pennsylvania and in my district, and my opponent at the time was a big proponent of taking taxpayer dollars from the people of Pennsylvania and bailing out a city like Portland that had already defunded their police and let their city burn for 6 months. It's immoral to take our tax dollars from hardworking people in Western Pennsylvania who are already struggling to bail out poorly run liberal cities. That's the major sticking point.
Or how about to fund gender diversity programs in Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So yes, optically, we're back to the COVID bill. It's an absolute disaster, and my fear is that problems like this are only going to get worse. And the point that I was making before this is that it's looking like, look, I don't know what the future holds, and you know that I'm a supporter of President Trump. I've talked to the president on multiple occasions. I'm always going to fight for the people of this country. I believe in President Trump, but it's amazing now that some of the more career politicians in Washington, they see the writing on the wall. They see President Trump that maybe in January, you've got a guy like Joe Biden that likely be sworn in as president.
Yeah.
Did you see with this bill how fast the swamp on both sides of the aisle went back to being the swamp?
Oh, yeah.
Right? We didn't see irresponsible spending bills like this in the news for 4 years under President Trump. Now, don't get me wrong. This is one of the areas where I disagree with the president a lot is his spending. He spends a lot more than I'm comfortable with. And so I disagree with him a lot on deficit spending and things like that. But I would also argue that in the middle of a crisis and a pandemic, once in a 100-year pandemic, that the times like this are precisely meant for deficit spending. But my point is the swamp has gone back to being the swamp in record time.
So I remember talking to some family earlier this year. And they were saying, you always rag on Democrats. All you do is Democrats this, Democrats that. And I'm like, I criticize Republicans. Admittedly,
you do.
Much less than I criticize Democrats. And I'm going to show everybody listening exactly why I am right. I have here from govtrack.us, HR 133 Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021, including coronavirus stimulus and relief. We can see in the Senate, 46 Democrats vote yay. 2 independents, who caucus with the Democrats, vote yay. 44 Republicans vote yay. But what's this? 6 Republicans voted nay, and 2 Republicans abstained. At least we have them. And I'll give a shout out to Rick Scott, Rand Paul, Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Ron Johnson. Now, those politicians are not far from perfect. You can criticize them for a bunch of different things. But at least they have the political willpower to say, I'm not signing this thing. Yeah. And it gets better. We jump over to the House vote, HR 133. And once again, we have 128 Republicans, yay. 230 Democrats, yay. 1 independent, yay. We have 50 Republicans, nay, rejecting this. 17 Republicans abstain. Grow a spine, guys, say no. And then only 2 Democrats actually voted against this. Of all of Congress, we ended up with 56 Republicans saying no. And what was the let's pull this back up and get the abstaining. We had 2 abstentions, so 19 Republicans abstained from the vote and only 2 Democrats. And it was Tulsi Gabbard, who I'm a big fan of and have praised, and Rashida Tlaib, who I've been very critical of, but my respect to her for saying no to this. I don't know what her reasons were, and each one of these politicians might have a different reason, but ultimately, saying no to this garbage was the right thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, because COVID relief should be for COVID relief.
Yes,
there are lots of...
And it should be bigger, and it should be for the American people.
I think that we should have done direct payments to the American people. I like $2,400 for people. I think that was President Trump's number in the past. Something that can actually help them pay their bills. What I really liked is the Paycheck Protection Program. In fact, before this bill was voted on, the Democrats in the House of Representatives, I think, voted against at least twice, perhaps a third time, extensions of the Paycheck Protection Program, which would simply have extended the program through the end of the year, right? Real simple vote. Extend the program through the end of the year and streamline the forgiveness process, right? The Democrats in the House of Representatives voted against that 3 times. And so I got massive problems with that.
Lydia pulled up the story from News WKRG 5. What's the date on this? This is from
just now,
December 22nd.
Yep.
Trump calls on Congress to amend COVID-19 relief bill to increase stimulus checks to $2,000 per person, remove wasteful and unnecessary items.
Yes.
But you see what Rand Paul's response to all this was? If 600, why not 1,200? If 1,200,
right.
why not
Why not
6,000?
10,000? Yeah.
Why not 20,000? Why not universal basic income?
I mean, you could fix this problem tomorrow if you just adopted a more surgical pandemic response.
Exactly.
And so I will say that I think the political motivations in blue states and governors like Newsom, Pritzker in Illinois, Cuomo in New York, Wolf in my home state of Pennsylvania, I believe that these second lockdowns are not just because of the coronavirus. I believe that they're making a political calculation and trying to put pressure on Mitch McConnell to bail out, as I mentioned, poorly run liberal states and liberal cities. By locking down the economy more, right? It puts more pressure on small businesses, more pressure on Mr. McConnell to give those governors what they want.
I've thought about, we went through the first lockdown. So we'll use this as a segue into the big story that we want to talk about. I remember earlier this year watching videos coming out of China where it's like someone's on a bus and they point the camera out the window and then someone just falls over. And it was like watching Shaun of the Dead. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie where he's like riding and he sees the person fall over and he's like looking. We saw a bunch of those videos. It was freaky. And what was happening is that people were having respiratory issues from COVID. And then just like earlier in the year, we had a very serious problem. So we all agreed, okay, we're going to lock down for 15 days because we can't stop this thing.
Right. I didn't agree with that, by the way.
Well, I did. Because the idea was flatten the curve, right? How many people forgot that already?
It didn't work.
Well, it did work.
COVID just went haywire anyway.
It went haywire. It came back. And so what happened was we did flatten the curve. And then we had this big flat period. And now it's spiking again, proving it's not going to stop. And we can't just stay locked down forever. So the appropriate response now, I believe, is protect the vulnerable, social distancing, masks, and reopening everything.
Well, so I think let's go back to the very beginning in January. What I saw coming out of China was very concerning to me. And the truth is, I didn't know, nor did anybody else, to include our intelligence community, what we were dealing with in COVID. And I think back then we didn't even have a name for it. And so Tom Cotton, and I think Tom Cotton and I were the first people in the country to say we need to ban all travel from China.
Yeah.
Until we can figure this out.
And they got mad at Tom Cotton for that.
They got mad at Tom Cotton. They got mad at me. Oh, we're xenophobic. And then I think the president a couple days later banned travel from China. This was all while impeachment, articles of impeachment, by the way, were being delivered from the House to the Senate. And then the president in an address, in fact, I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and the president banned all travel from Europe. And I remember watching that thinking, oh my God, this is serious. He's doing a presidential address. Banning all travel from Europe is a big deal.
Yeah, definitely.
And this was at the time where Nancy Pelosi was passing out impeachment pens and telling people to go out in Chinatown, and Mayor de Blasio saying, go see a movie.
Come on down to Chinatown.
And
Don't be
Joe
racist.
Biden, again, calling Donald Trump xenophobic, a hysterical xenophobic.
But I know the media loves to push this fake fact check where they're like, Biden never called Trump xenophobic.
Yeah.
To specify, in response to Trump's call for banning travel to China, Joe Biden said, we don't need Donald Trump xenophobia. So it was very clear he was calling Trump a xenophobe in response to this. But the media goes, but he didn't call him that. He said he was, yeah, okay, shut up, media.
Yeah, so my point is that I was okay with the lockdowns early on precisely because we didn't know enough about the virus. I mean, for God's sake, it could have had a 50% fatality rate.
Yeah, we were worried.
And in those instances, just from a strategic pandemic military response standpoint, when you don't know a whole lot about the pathogen, you want to make sure that you protect people and keep them isolated as long as possible until you learn about what this thing can do. My point is, after 15 days to slow the spread, then 30 days to slow the spread, then 2 months to slow the spread, then 6 months to slow. But the point is, We know a lot more about COVID-19 today than we did in January. We know
Better
who it
treatments.
affects. Yeah, we've got therapeutics, Regeneron. I mean, we've got hydroxychloroquine, by the way. Which
The AMA came back out.
Now it's cool because the election's over. Hydroxychloroquine actually
The American
worked.
Medical Association reversed their previous advice on
Exactly.
hydroxychloroquine. Amazing.
Exactly. And so not only that, now we've got 2 effective vaccines. And by the way, people that criticize the president's pandemic response, again, does President Trump always say the right thing? No. But this public-private partnership, Project Airbridge, was an unprecedented success. I mean, he delivered personal protective equipment, PPE, at levels that we never thought possible by simply partnering with private institutions to make them available. And he got criticized for there not being enough personal protective equipment.
Democrats were actually praising him. We had Cuomo and Newsom actually going
at the time. Right. At the time, yes, they were praising him.
And Fauci said, we're doing a great job. I don't think anybody could have done anything better.
We developed so many ventilators in this country in such a short amount of time that we didn't even come close to using what we created and what we made. And we sent them all around the world. Do you remember the hospital ships up in New York City and outside LA? Do you know how many people went on the USS Comfort?
None,
I think
right?
like one patient, right? And I don't even think it was a COVID patient, right?
The Javits Center had like 30% capacity.
Yeah, and Operation Warp Speed was an unprecedented success. All of this stuff happened under President Trump's leadership. The development of personal protective equipment, which, by the way, our national stockpile of personal protective equipment was completely depleted
by Obama.
Under Obama and Joe Biden under the H1N1.
Think about this, okay? Donald Trump, I remember getting in a Twitter argument with some leftist, and I said Donald Trump did a good job on COVID, and their only response was, oh my God, are you serious? And I was like, so we had a lefty on the show, and the first thing he brought up was, I understand, like when he was addressing it, there's no metric by which to judge a good job or a bad job because it's one leader, it's one president doing this one thing. You can try and compare it to historical moments or whatever, and you can't do it, right? So I'm like, you're correct. I agree with that. And he goes, and that being said, here's why Trump did a bad job. And I said, well, I think Trump did a good job. It's really about whether you like Trump or don't.
That's what it boils down to, is it's Trump's comportment. People, and I will tell you, because we experienced this on the campaign trail, I don't know what it is. I mean, I think when you talk about the president's achievements, whether it's Project Airbridge or Operation Warp Speed or some of these unprecedented public-private partnerships or ventilator production, like all of these things, I mean, were happened in record time. I mean, the fact that we have 2 vaccines available to people in under a year is close to a miracle. It happened under President Trump's leadership, but people didn't like him at the podium during press conferences.
I know.
They didn't like how he interacted with the media, and so that was enough for people to say, "Oh, I just don't like. I don't think he's doing a good job."
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.